What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster here on this Monday evening, April 4th, 2022, about 6:17 p.m. California time. Latest quake shows a 3.9 earthquake coming into the area of South America, it looks like, right there along the Peru-Chile Trench at about 15 kilometers below the surface. Let's go ahead and check out the latest quake activity here from the USGS, folks, showing continued movement up here in the Northern California. This is a 2.5 and above. I know there's been some more earthquake activity here in this region over the course of the last 12 hours or so. This morning we've seen a 4.1 and a 3.8 earthquake strike just outside of the Fortuna and Eureka, California area. Pretty deep movement into the subduction zone of the Cascadia southern end. So 4.1, 3.8, 1.8, and a 2.9. But I have been watching the seismograph stations here throughout the day today, and we've definitely seen some further activity, a little bit smaller than what they're reporting here, but more quakes happening than what's showing up here on the USGS map. So this is at the southern end of the Cascadia. That's deep, about, like I said, 21 kilometers into the subduction zone. I want to check out the tremor activity right off the bat here and kind of cover the movement that's taken place here into the area of the Cascadia. As you know, we've had a pretty extensive quiet spell towards about the end of 2021. December was pretty quiet. January, February, all quiet as well. It just kicked up as far as the tremor count back around March 21st. Since then, we've seen, quite a few thousands of tremor being recorded here. Now, these periods of tremor activity and lack of tremor activity do occur on you can't really say regular intervals because it kind of, if you look at these charts here, you see spikes spread out every so few months. It's supposed to be 14 months or so the tremor events kick in, but it looks as though these tremor events are getting closer linked together. And I've always said when we see this amount of tremor activity in a small amount of time, we're looking at the likelihood of a Cascadia event happening. And I'll go over the reason why I believe here in a second. But you can see the uptick in tremor right around the 20th, 21st time frame. And since then, we've had, this is going back to about the middle of February. Most of this activity is from the middle of March. You can see up here, March 20th is when it really kicked up and started racking up a bunch of numbers. But 11,808 epicenters of tremor. Pretty extensive amount of activity along the Cascadia subduction zone, mostly in the Northern California, Oregon, and the Washington and Vancouver Island ranges. So covered quite a bit of the entire subduction zone itself. So the Cascadia, we kind of talk about the likelihood or possibility of seeing something on the large size due to all this tremor activity. I kind of want to show you the overview of the Cascadia subduction zone. First, I'm going to bring up this image here real quick. Stand by for just a second. There we go. So this here is kind of like a cutout plate here, similar to what you're seeing on this screen right here, but a little bit more, I can't say detailed, but I drew some X's and circled the slip area right there. Now the slip area is underneath the North American plate. As you go up towards the X's, right, that's kind of towards the locked area. You can see the locked zone around the X's and to the left side where it says locked. That's the Juan de Fuca subduction zone locked area. So the slippage area is down dip, downstream, about 25 to 40 kilometers below the surface there. And if you think about this, you get some plate movement. See those arrows right there? I kind of amplified them up a little bit just so you can see a little bit more detail of what they look like there. You got the North American plate kind of lifting up a little bit, right? See that? It's kind of got the arrows on there as well. And the Juan de Fuca plates, of course, subducting, sliding underneath the North American plate. So you kind of get this uplift here along the coast range. And the GPS stations, of course, along the areas of California, Northern California, and the Oregon coast, Washington area, all show obvious signs of vertical uplift due to this springing type action kind of like a winding up a spring so tight. Eventually, you're going to have a pretty large earthquake. So this is kind of like a little overview of the Cascadia subduction zone, and sometimes we can get some deep earthquakes and somewhat on the larger size as well. Not as the 8s and 9s that we see along the locked area, but deeper subduction zone quakes, deeper than what we're seeing there with the activity today, and larger. Looks like possibly could see up around the 7.0 magnitude earthquakes. We've seen some of those back in 1949, 1965, and 2001. Looks like at least these folks are hinting at recurrence intervals of 30 to 50 years, so on average. So we could be coming up to that possibility coming up soon for possibly a 7.0 in the deeper areas. There's also crustal faults, crustal quakes, due to this interaction of the North American Pacific Plate and the Juan de Fuca Plate area, all getting that you get these very shallow crustal quakes, and these guys are saying hundreds of years, possibly 900 AD in the yellow circles here, and 1872 for these in the Washington area. And if I remember right, yeah, there's that 2001 quake. I remember that up there in Washington area. And this is just covering Washington. There's other areas of Oregon and Northern California that where they see kind of the same type of setup with these deep subduction zone quakes and crustal quakes taking place. But specifically up for the Washington area, these guys are talking about hundreds of years possible for crustal faults, and the last one was 1872, right? 1972, we're looking at a little bit of time frame kicking up here. So on top of the crustal earthquakes, the possibility of that coming up in our time frame, the possibility of the deep Juan de Fuca Plate earthquakes, that coming up in our lifetime as well. There's the possibility of the full rupture zone. Full rupture of the Cascadia subduction zone would produce upwards of about a 9.0 magnitude earthquake in the locked area, upstream from the deep earthquakes and upstream from the tremor activity that we're seeing on the PNSN tremor map here. Got to remember, this is down dip of the locked area, which sits just offshore here. It kind of runs along the Vancouver Island ranges, just offshore of Northern Cal, Oregon, and Washington area. Let me get back to the this area right here. So we got three possibilities of kind of overdue, right? These guys are saying 500 to 600 year intervals for reoccurrence. Well, there's a couple different. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can pull this up. A couple different. It depends on who you ask, right? Depends on who you ask. When it comes to the intervals of full ruptures and partial ruptures. Okay, this is kind of a cool overview from the OregonLive.com website. It goes back and measures 10,000 years of Cascadia earthquakes. The chart shows all 40 major earthquakes in the Cascadia subduction zone that geologists estimate have occurred since 9,845 BC. Scientists estimated the magnitude and timing of each quake by examining soil samples at more than 50 undersea sites between Washington, Oregon, and California. These guys, about average quake is 246 years. So sometimes we see a little bit lengthy period between some earthquakes, and sometimes we get these back-to-back 8-pointers. I'm not going to go through all of these, but these guys are stating 246 years. The last rupture that we know of, right? 1700. Back in January 1700. 9.0 megathrust earthquake along the Cascadia. There's definitely records of it, not only across the globe in Japan, but through ghost forests and soil samples and tsunami deposits. Me and Missy Mimi's checked out soil samples last year along the Oregon coastline inland, and kind of checked that out. That was pretty cool up there to see the former tsunami events here from the Megaquake earthquakes back in 1700. Megaquake earthquake, I should say. So this one here, 1700, full length was 621 miles long, magnitude 9.0. Prior to that, back in 1468, 547 years ago, we had an 8.7. So that one, it shows it as a full rupture. Rupture length 621.4 kilometer or miles, same as the 1700 quake. Then sometimes we get these partial ruptures, the southern segment, Northern California area, and those things can produce upwards of around the 8.7 magnitude earthquake, which would definitely be pretty powerful, and I believe strongly to produce a tsunami throughout the region. So that one right there, there's 1700, 1468, and then we have these partial ruptures. 615 years ago, 1400 AD, 8.1, right? 8.1, 137.9 miles rupture. That's in the southern end. Rupture width of 24.8 miles. 8.7 was a full rupture, 1468, and 8.1, 1400, a partial rupture. And then prior to that, we had another full rupture with an 8.8 magnitude back in 1152 AD. And so on, right? So we get these big ones. We get these upper eights and lower eights from partial ruptures. We kind of got to, we can look at these trends here, right? We can look at, well, there's a space in between here since about 6500 BC to, well, this is 6,500 years ago, but 4516 BC to 4009 BC. So there's a, 500 years there intervals, and it looks like prior to that as well. So nobody can really say exactly how long it's going to take for this Cascadia to go, but all I know is we're getting into the time frame of where things are getting interesting, and things have been building up for quite a while. Not only from the subduction of the Cascadia or the Juan de Fuca plate, but also the lack of deep Juan de Fuca plate earthquakes, the deeper large ones, and also the crustal earthquakes. So there's a window that we're coming into, so to speak, that we need to take heed and watch very closely. That could happen any day now, any day, with the average quake at 246 years, according to these folks. So the U.S. Geological Survey scientists studied undersea core samples of soil looking for turbidites, deposits of sediments that flow along the ocean floor during large earthquakes. The samples were gathered from more than 50 sites during cruises back in these years. All of these sites here. This is a pretty cool article. It's somewhat short, but there is a whole lot of info on the Cascadia. Geological evidence shows that the earthquakes at or near a magnitude 9.0 have been happening along the Cascadia subduction zone for thousands of years. Scientists have been able to figure out how often they happen along the fault section that spans the Oregon coast, an average of 234 years on this one, since the last one happened 315 years ago. Oregon is due for a major event. And then it goes into some other stuff here, but it goes on and talks a little bit about the Cascadia on numerous articles. You can check out so many throughout the region. Here's another little overview of the plate, Juan de Fuca plate, of course the Pacific plate over here, and the sections here kind of splitting apart on the ocean seafloor. ETS zone is the slow slip event tremor zone. See how it kind of goes in here? This doesn't show Northern California in here, but it covers down into there as well. And it occurs right within this area right here. And the locked area sits right upstream. Let's go back here and I wanted to get off of that real quick. So a little bit about, a lot of people, I was up in Oregon last year a couple times along the coastline, and I was surprised at the amount of people that don't even know what the Cascadia subduction zone is. They don't know. What's that? I know we get tsunamis around here, you know, from the Alaska earthquake and the Japan earthquake in 2011, some small ones, but these guys don't, I don't know, maybe I just find it odd. Several places I stayed at over there along the Oregon coastline, Brookings area, into Coos Bay region, Gold Beach. A lot of people were clueless on the Cascadia. So it sits right offshore of Oregon, folks, and there's some beautiful countryside out there, beautiful beaches, lots of beautiful little towns, but it's a danger zone. It's pretty much a firecracker in the waiting, and it's getting closer day by day. It is a convergent plate boundary that stretches from northern Vancouver Island in Canada to northern California in the United States. It is a very long sloping subduction zone where the Explorer, Juan de Fuca, and the Gorda Plate. I kind of always separate the three, right? A lot of people just say the Juan de Fuca Plate. Well, if you look at it as kind of like a whole, yes, but there's three separate plates in the region. Gorda Plate in the south, Explorer Plate in the north, and Juan de Fuca Plate in the middle. A lot of people just say the Juan de Fuca Plate. But they move to the east and slide below the much larger, mostly continental North American plate. There's a bunch of info. There's the ghost forest I was talking about here. I got up there to the beach where these were at, but unfortunately the tide was high, so I was unable to see the stumps, the old trees, old large tree stumps that were protruding from the sand. See, during low tide, you got to be up there during low tide to see this stuff. So I might try to get up there eventually. See if I can't get that again, or at least check it out. They talk about here's the intervals, right? Regular intervals of 13 to 16 months. They're talking about the slow slip fault, the tremor activity. Tremor occurs deeper on the subduction interface than the locked area where megathrust earthquakes appear. The depth of tremor along the subduction interface in Cascadia ranges from 28 to 45. What did I say, about 25 to 40? Okay, so it's a little bit deeper than that. And the motion is so slow that it is not felt at the surface by people or animals, but it can be measured by very sensitive equipment. And it's building, folks. It's definitely building. And I look at this tremor activity and kind of think, man, this is quite a bit for this area. But then again, we're coming up on that 13 to 16 month period, right, where we see those intervals kind of kick up, and that's going to be these spiky lines right here. But man, it almost seems like we're getting closer with these spiky lines, kind of like they're occurring more, right? Looks like the last one was back in October last year. So technically, if we're looking at that 13 to 16 months, and we're just in April, or this kicked up in the later half of March, I'd call that pretty quick. And it's happened like that for the past couple years, it seems like. It really started to kick up there around 2020, where we're just seeing quite a bit of tremor activity really ramp up close together. So I think it's something to watch. Not predicting a large-scale mega thrust earthquake at all. I don't forecast earthquakes, but I do look at trends, and I do look at events such as this. And I know tremor does put a lot of strain up on along the locked area of the Cascadia. Today, 403 epicenters, mostly up here around the Vancouver Island ranges, north of Seattle, and a little bit into the southern Oregon region. So got to watch that pretty closely, folks. Like I say, you can do a research on this. There's lots of charts. These folks saying on average 246 years. Let's go ahead and move on a little bit on the earthquake map. And as far as activity goes up here around the Vancouver Island ranges, yeah, we're seeing a little bit of activity into the region just outside of Vancouver, north of the Strait of Juan de Fuca into the Strait of Georgia, it looks like. 2.7, 18.6 kilometers. So that's definitely a subduction zone earthquake. These down here in Northern California, 21 kilometers down dip, remember, into the tremor area. A lot of times, though, this is kind of shallow, and this is more upstream, closer to the locked area. If you recall, remember the tremor map, a lot of this tremor activity, let's go ahead and bring this back up here. A lot of the tremor activity does take place here in Northern California, or underneath Northern California, but it's down dip more. See that? More inland, meaning more down dip. And this earthquake activity is upstream, closer to the locked area. So that's why I'm saying we're putting quite a bit of strain out here on the area of the Cascadia, the locked zone. from all of this activity kicking up. What else we got here? Let's go ahead and move on. Don't want to make this an hour-long documentary, but people have been asking about the Cascadia and where the locked zone sits at, and you know, there's lots of maps on it, folks. Definitely lots of maps. It's going to be this red area right here, basically just offshore, up to where it subducts, upstream where it starts to go down, subducts into the underneath the North American plate. So a lot of people just asking about it, wondering what's going on, and wanted some more info about it. Sometimes I covered the Cascadia a little bit more. I've done it in previous videos, so I figured I'd bounce it up here again tonight just to cover that. Southern California looks a little spotty. We are seeing a little cluster of quakes scattered out and about here on the Pacific side of the plate boundary around Los Angeles and the Santa Barbara area. Quite a few microquakes throughout the region of Southern California. They are definitely reporting some activity in Washington today. Hey, look at that. Some movement around Mount Rainier and just south of there as well. But for the longest time, it seems like yesterday they started adding back on quakes. And prior to that, for 4 or 5 days, not a speck of an earthquake at all. It's kind of a little on the odd side. Definitely a little on the odd side. I do want to check out the Newberry Volcano volcanic seismicity map here into the Oregon region. There was a little article that the USGS put out about this little earthquake swarm that occurred well over the last couple weeks. It looks like there has been some here as well within the last couple days, not being reported on the USGS map. Yeah, like I say, we've been watching the USGS map, and they even on the all magnitudes map, they should be popping up these little microquakes, and they haven't been. So they're 0.8, a little bit smaller, but they technically, right, all magnitude map should still show up there, but they haven't. So we'll go ahead and look at the recorded seismograph, a 3-component broadband station, North Rim, Newberry, Oregon, and see what these folks are reporting for earthquake activity. It looks like a 2.7 near Vancouver was showing up there. Sometimes these maps are hard to read. Definitely, wow. Definitely some earthquake activity kicking up here in these spikes. There's some type of noise shadow kind of really kicking up here on the chart. I don't know if they're amplifying the seismograph instrument itself, because it kind of looks like it's cranked up a little bit too much as far as the sensitivity goes, but there's definitely some earthquake activity out there, very small ones, so maybe that's what they're trying to do. They're turning it up to see what they can find as far as maybe what's happening, you know, at a very, very, could be a deep level, or it could be just some very, very light activity that's just barely being picked up, where they need to amplify this up a little bit. But yeah, the USGS did put out an article about it, stating that everything still remains as is, as far as the volcano goes. You know, there's no elevated change. It's just a mention of a small earthquake swarm there at Newberry, and they're going to continue to monitor the activity. So, a little bit of interesting, right? Interesting movement. They're at the volcano in Oregon. Let's check out Mount St. Helens here while we're on the volcano kick. Let's go up here, volcanic seismicity, and you guys can check this out as well. The PNSN network is a pretty cool site to check out. Most of the time, all of their stuff is working. Sometimes it seems a little suspicious and they're not reporting it. But I do like to go over here and check this out from time to time and see what these seismographs are reporting here. Some movement here, looks like a little bit of activity in the mix, but nothing major, no specific large-scale movement taking place there at those two volcanoes that I can note. Nevada, Mina, Nevada, Tonopah area still seeing some activity, and some movement down into the Southern California, as I mentioned, around the San Jacinto Fault Zone. The Salton Sea looks pretty calm and clear for now. One earthquake, though, right off of the southern segment of the San Andreas Fault around the, looks like the Hidden Valley Fault Spring, Hidden Springs Fault, a 2.0 near the North Shore. So a little bit of adjustment down there, a bit of an increase in pressure along the North American side of that plate boundary. Across Oklahoma, some movement. Looks like a little activity around El Reno and the Union City area. And the rest of the country, pretty quiet. Middle America Trench has gone very quiet. Look at that. Mexico, Guatemala, all not showing anything. Of course, 4.0 and above. EMSC models, I'm sure, are showing something. We'll go ahead and check this out while we're on it real quick. And yeah, a little bit of activity here. A couple fours, right? It looks like earlier today, those not being reported on the USGS map. Also a little earthquake into the Gulf of California region. We've seen earlier 4.4. I'm pretty certain, though, that the USGS... Well, no. Where did it go? Come on, USGS. They're just not... It seems like they're skipping areas each day. Well, today we'll do the Pacific Northwest, and then tomorrow we'll stop reporting down here. Okay. Maybe they don't sound like that, but there's definitely some activity kicking up that the EMSC is reporting. Threes. There's that 4.4 and a 3.5 into the Gulf of California region. So these little earthquakes here, these threes, yeah, we like to keep an eye on them. We like to watch those too. Kind of gives us a good indication of where earthquake activity could be ramping up in terms of swarms. Deloitte Seamount, some movement yesterday, still on the map. Nothing major going on at the moment. Just that little earthquake swarm off the coast. And up here around the Mauna Loa area, some very shallow movement. Largest one looks to be a 2.4 at 0.1 kilometers, so nothing too deep. All shallow movement in the Big Island. Here's the activity around Japan and the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench. Seen a couple 5s and 4s over the course of the 24-hour period. And some movement around the Philippine Plate working its way down into the Vanuatu area, where we've seen a 6.0 earthquake. That was at 16:06 earlier this morning. That came in pretty shallow and a little deep. Not super shallow. Normally you see these 10-kilometer depths here, such as the Loyalty Islands earthquake activity we've seen last week and today. But this one down there about 23 kilometers. Just south of the Port Vila Vanuatu area, and some further deep movement over here around Fiji, 513 kilometers for that 4.8. Rest of the map, some movement around the Mediterranean, Greece area, and also Bulgaria. Seen a 4.5 this morning. Looking at the Yellowstone overview, not a whole lot of movement here. Kicking up one earthquake earlier today, it looks like, around the northwestern section of the park. Other than that, things all calm and clear throughout the region. No major stuff to report throughout the Yellowstone area. Solar weather activity kicking up. Well, looks like a G1 predicted class storm. I don't know if we can trust these guys. They've been kind of on the dud forecasting recently, but they are forecasting a G1 April 6th, G1 on the 7th as well, from some CMEs and the filament eruption that occurred on the 3rd. Looks like that was Earth directed from these visual graphs here on the charts. Solar flare activity has dropped like a rock. Only a 75% chance of C flare. All other possibilities down to 20 or 5% chance. So the sunspot activity is somewhat diminishing. The active region that we were looking at from all the activity last week is now out of sight, out of mind for now. You got 2978, 2981, and a couple other growing sunspots around the bend. We'll keep an eye on those over the coming days. So, all right, folks, have a good night. Stay safe out there, and just be prepared. You know, definitely not be scared. I don't pop up this info to scare people, but to just keep people aware of what's going on. I think it's pretty important to be aware of the Cascadia tremor, the amount of it, and the possibility of a full-scale 9.0 earthquake into the Pacific Northwest. I mean, I'm pretty much about as ready as I can be here in Northern California. I just hope that everyone up north, Oregon, Washington, along the coastline, have plans as well. You know, it's just it's not going to be a good day when that thing does unzip. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep watching it pretty closely and updating as necessary. Till now, or till later, have a good night, folks. Enjoy the rest of your Monday evening. We'll chat you guys sometime tomorrow. Peace out.